In a few moments, I'm going to be pleased to introduce Dee Allen, who's going to come up. Now, Dee is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, an integrative coach, and a positive psychology practitioner. She uses her skills in that work to work with individuals, communities, and organizations. Not only that, Dee is an academic holding 2 masters, an MA in screenwriting and an MSc in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology. Dee's talk is about who is the author of your story. And she essentially shares what it's like to reflect on the stories we tell ourselves and how we can explore them as narratives. But more than exploring them as narratives, rewriting those narratives. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dee Allen.
Thank you, everyone. Testing. Okay. Okay, so how's everybody feeling? You're energized and what have you? Okay, good. So I've got my notebook because I'm a little bit nervous because I am going to share some of my personal story, but I'm going to make sure that there's something that you can take away from it. So I know the title of my talk today is Who's the Author of Your Story? And I want you to think of that, but I also need to know, show of hands, who likes action films? Who likes romantic comedies? Horrors? Okay, all right. So we've all of us have watched Hollywood films, right? So I want to tell you about how I fell in love with stories. My mum was the person that introduced me to stories. She was the person that sung lullabies to me. She was the person that read my first fairy tales. She was the person that took me to the local library and we explored all of these books. And, you know, I got so excited. You can tell I was a bit of a geek because I got really excited about my little library card. I made her have a library card as well so I could get books on her cards. So my mum introduced me to stories. She not only introduced me to reading and books and what have you, but she also had a love of musicals. I hate musicals. So to give an example, I have a very unorthodox approach to some, or thoughts about some of the musicals that we have, like The Sound of Music. Yes, I know. Right. But The Sound of Music, the way that I tell that story is that they kicked Maria out of the nunnery. She got a job and she was a really bad employee. She cut up those good curtains, or really nice curtains, and made clothes and ran off with broke up the boss's engagement. I'm not a fan of The Lion King either. I know, gasp. But I'm kind of like, if Simba had listened to his dad, but yeah, so my mum loved musicals, and I still remember her watching, some of you might be too young, but I still remember her watching, what was it called? My Fair Lady. And there was one scene in it where Eliza, if you don't know the story, there's this woman called Eliza Doolittle. Is it Eliza Doolittle? Can't remember her name. But anyway, there was this woman, she's really cockney, and there's a professor, and he's trying to teach her how to, speak the Queen's English and be really refined. And everything seems to be going well until they take her to the racetrack, and the horses are moving, and she screams, "Move your bloody ass!" And every year, my mum would watch it and laugh as if it was the first time she heard it. So I got to see firsthand how much she loves stories, and then she gave it to me. I get a bit emotional, so I'm going to look at some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So she regaled me with stories of growing up in Jamaica. So I'm over here, kid in England, in the city London, but yet the way she talked about Jamaica, I knew what it was. I could taste it. She made me enjoy stories so much that I started to write my own. I started to love writing stories. I loved writing, period. And, I even started diaries every year. I would start a diary and I was going to, write in it daily. Never happened. So that love of stories ended up with me going to film school. I thought I was going to be like the female equivalent of Spike Lee, Martin Scorsese. Only thing was that filming is really boring. No offense to you camera people and what have you, but it was really boring. And I think in my second year, again, we didn't use digital back then, we used film. And I remember in the second year being like this, it was pouring down with rain and I'm working on a student film. I'm holding umbrellas over the cameras and I'm getting poured on. And I thought, not really passionate about this. I need something that's going to make me still tell stories, but in the comfort of my house. So I went into screenwriting. Now, the reason why I mention all of this is, like I said, my mum is the reason that I'm passionate about stories. I think it's such a powerful way to share information. It's a powerful way to define meaning. And we do it all the time. We share stories of how we came in, how was our journey. We tell jokes, we complain about the boss. There's so many ways that we engage in stories. And the reason why I asked you about films as well is because many times people will watch stories on television because it's, that way of, escaping, but also there's some really powerful stories that we can define or get meaning from. So there was this brilliant guy called Joseph Campbell, and Joseph Campbell, he wrote something called The Hero's Journey. And show of hands, anybody familiar with it? Okay, cool, that's great. All right, so for those of you who aren't familiar with it, you know the story. Basically, it's a template. It's a story template that can be applied to literature. It can be applied to most films, yeah? Any Hollywood film, it can be applied to. So let's say a rom-com. Boy meets girl, boy likes girl, wants to get with girl. There's problems, he overcomes those problems, they get together. Something happens, there's always something that jacks it up. But something happens, and then it's like, all is lost. How are they gonna get together? But they somehow manage to do it. And then what happens is that they get together, but their world is forever changed because of that experience. Just trying to think if this, any kind of hero, protagonist, and what have you, has the same sort of thing. It's challenges, your world is okay, something happens, just challenges, and then they overcome it. I'm going to fast forward because I'm seeing I'm halfway through, but I'll tell you a little bit about my challenge. So I thought that my story was going really well. Me and Mum's story was fantastic. There's other people in my family, but I don't talk about them. So me and Mum's story was going fantastic. And then my mum got diagnosed with a terminal illness. And that day shattered my world. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And it's a very slow disease. But I found myself masking an internal battle that I hadn't expected to have. I was always the so-called strong one. I was the one that if there was a problem, I could find solutions. I was a fixer. But what happens when there's a problem that you can't fix? What happens when you don't have a solution? What happens if you don't recognize the story that you're living in? So I was in a lot of pain, and I coped. And sometimes we can have maladaptive coping mechanisms. So what I didn't realize was I was pushing through, and I didn't realize that actually I was in the stages of being a person with high functioning depression. And there came a point where the functioning part left. And so I just got the depression. And crippling anxiety came along. And so what I decided to do was I decided to pick up a plain notebook, and I started writing and journaling. I started writing things that I couldn't express. I started pouring out thoughts and emotions, and I was doing this daily. It was a way of dumping everything that was in here and in here out on the pages. I then, I'm not just saying, journaling is a very good therapeutic intervention. And years later, I would fangirl out about a professor, this guy called James Pennebaker, who's a social psychologist, because what he had discovered decades before is that writing interventions heal. And to give you an example of that, he had done this research in the 80s, got people to write about things, and they did studies, and there's been hundreds of studies since that shows that writing interventions improves the immune system, it regulates your emotions, I should have done some before I came on the stage, I'm really nervous. It lowers your, let's start again. It regulates your emotions, it decreases rumination on negative and unhelpful thoughts. It reduces anxiety, stress, and high blood pressure. As I said, it improves the immune system, and it helps with problem solving, providing opportunities of reflection and growth, and helps with planning and achieving goals. Unbeknownst to me, when I was going through what I was going through, I created my own practice. And what I started doing was I got a coach because I wanted to look at the future. And I got a therapist because I needed to look at what was actually happening and look at the past. And I was using journaling. To skip a bit, because of time, I now do the work that helped me. I became a coach. My specialism and the reason why I like learning, but the reason why I'm into academia is because I'm really interested in finding the research. I don't think research should be something that academics just have. I think it should be something that should be applied. The reason why I decided to study positive psychology and coaching psychology is because I'm interested in what works, and I'm interested in bringing that into the community. And that's what I do now. I run journaling and psychoeducational programs. I bring coaching into the community, to so-called hard-to-reach communities or young people or men, and I found that it has been really, really impactful. I didn't know that when I decided I was going to come up and speak or agree to do it, that Black History Month was about reclaiming narratives. So I don't want to leave here with you thinking, oh God, you know, that girl's mum, she got sick, she got depression, she wrote her way out of it, because clearly it's not as linear as that. But I want to tell you about my mum's narrative. So my mum was a little 5'3" woman. By the time I was 10, we were the same height, which is a bit disturbing. She was a Jamaican woman from the Windrush generation who trained as a nurse in Jamaica, came over here and worked for the NHS for many years. She loved it so much that when she retired, she was off for a couple of months, and then she said, sod this, I'm going back. Well, she didn't say sod this because that's not mum's language, but she said she's going back. She met and married my dad, had 2 kids. Because of her love of sports, she has grandsons that love football, so it's really funny that it missed me and my brother, but it went straight to the grandkids. She taught me how to swim when she could not, piano lessons, love of arts and what have you. One of the things that we found out later on when I went to university is that she gave me this gift of loving to read and write, even though dyslexia tried to steal that away from me. So the reason why I say this is because I had been letting depression, anxiety, Parkinson's disease write my mum's story and write my own. We have a tendency sometimes when people are diagnosed with something to label them as that, and they're more than that. Today we've spoken about legacy, and my mum's legacy lives on in the lives that she's touched. not just me and her children and her grandchildren, but in the work that I do. I could never be a nurse because I don't like blood and mess and all of that stuff. Could never do that. But I definitely believe in healing work. I definitely believe, like so many of us have shared our stories today, that we've been through things, but if we can make it easier for somebody else, then let's make it easier. As coaches, we turn around and work with people who come to us because they've got challenges, and we work with them to reframe their narratives. I want you to think of, I've used story and narrative interchangeably, but I want you to think of story is a sequence of events. It's events, yeah? But narrative is the sequence in which they happen. It's the meaning that you give them. It's the nuances. I gave you some beats of my mum's story so that you would understand who she was. And spookily enough, as I get older, I realize how much she has sowed in me, that the legacy that she's now left is defined in the work that I do. I'm passionate, really, really passionate, that we should ask ourselves, who is the author of our stories? Is it a diagnosis? Is it your emotions? Is it something that someone else has spoken into your life? Is it low self-esteem? Was it anxiety and nervousness telling me, what are you doing? But who's authoring your story? So what I'd like to do is ask you today, because we've got the last few months of 2024, and you can just reflect on it, or if you want, you can use them as journal prompts. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. What is the story that you are or have been telling yourself? As the title of my talk is, who or what is the author of your story? And are you ready to discover the gifts in your story, also known as your true narrative? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dee. Sorry, I'm wrapped up in those questions. I'm sort of half reflecting, half here on stage. Thank you so much, Dee. That was absolutely, what a belter to finish on. And yeah, I'm perplexed. I'm in a world of story and my own. And who is writing that?